Thank you. Thank you for having me. 20 minutes to share something with you, which is a fundamental transformation in what's happening in our industry. So it's a little bit of a challenge. Quadmark, we've been working with vendors and channel partners in the ICT world for about 20 years. And since we started, we've always heard about there is a big transformation happening. However, we've seen that accelerating and actually happening a lot more over the past 5 years. So we thought we'd share a little bit of that history with you. But we thought we'd start very far back. Somebody about 130 years ago saw an opportunity, and he thought, why don't I start distributing weird, interesting products via catalogs? And so that gentleman started putting a catalog together, and it became very, very successful. It was in the US. And what he realized is, actually, I could take this big business of mine, selling stuff through catalogs, mail order, and I could actually transform this into physical stores. And the only thing that I need to have is a little bit more understanding as to where the opportunities are, where should I be setting up those stores. And the thing which is funny is I've got all this local information that is sent to me by my customers. I've got their address, I know what they like, I know what they want, I know when they like it, I know that if you purchased a jacket, maybe you're likely to purchase some boots. So they started putting together what today we would call big data. We're talking about 1890s, so we're talking about 130 plus years ago. And we're already thinking about what are we going to do with that data? How does that drive our business? Yeah? That company was called Sears. Anybody knows of Sears? Sears? Yeah? What happened to Sears last year? That? Not good? Yeah? And one of the main reasons why that happened is because something similar is happening to their industry, and they forgot about their own history, which is quite interesting. They disrupted the retail segment by rethinking how do I use this mail order information that I'm collecting every day, and how do I actually transform this into a different experience. And what we see today is another company which is doing exactly the same thing, which is taking data that they're collecting through all these orders that get placed, and basically transforming the retail experience by leveraging that data and by completely changing the way people think about purchasing stuff. It used to be before you had to think twice before you were ordering online because it would take you 3 days to a week to actually arrive. Now in some cities it can be delivered within the hour. So it changes completely the way people are thinking about the business that you're in, the business we're in, which is how do I distribute products and how do I make it successfully. The thing that we've seen is you're not basically standing still as a group of channel partners. You are making a lot of investments, and you actually are rethinking, so where do I need to place my bets? Anybody knows what is the biggest area where people have been investing over the past 2 to 3 years? What is the biggest set of investment that is being done by channel partners around the world over the past 2 to 3 years? Anybody wants to shout me any? What is the largest investment made by channel partners around the world? Logistics. So we're getting close. It's not logistics, but we're getting very close. The largest investment that has been done by channel partners around the world is in infrastructure, and in particular, IT infrastructure. You have started to realize that it's actually quite important to be able to offer a new set of services, a new set of solutions to your customers. And as a collective around the world, for distribution, for example, 75% of the investments over the past 2-3 years have been purely in cloud and cloud-type infrastructure. Massive investment. Ingram Micro invested more than $2 billion in their cloud infrastructure. These are very large bets, but what choice do you have? You need to continue investing in what the industry sees as being the way you're going to be able to differentiate. So the investments are being made by channel partners, but it's difficult. It's a tough business, and it's not a very cash-rich business. It's very rare that we meet a channel partner that doesn't complain about margins too low, prices dropping. So we really need to be careful about how we actually go about investing that money. And the thing that is quite interesting is your customers know exactly where they want to go. Your customers know that they don't want to invest the way they used to be investing in IT anymore. It used to be a very long-running trope that we basically would be selling a product to a customer, then would be selling them maintenance services, then would be selling them professional services to rip off whatever we'd sold them 5 years ago, and then sell them some new gear. We collect 25% every time we do this, and off we go again. Yeah. No more. Your customers can actually go and look at something like AWS, for example, as a service, and spin a new storage unit, spin a new server instance within 5 minutes and just a credit card. Yeah. So, and that's not new, right? That's been going on for a while. But what we're seeing is a very rapid acceleration of that trend. Customers are tired. They do not want to purchase IT products the way they used to over the past 20 years. We've all made a bit of money, that's great, but customers do not want that anymore. They do not want you to just be selling them point products, collect your 25 points, and then go away for the next 2 years. That's not working anymore. So we need to rethink the way we acquire customers. We need to rethink the way we are delivering value to those customers as well. One other thing we do in Quadmark is actually we look at the financials of most of the channel partners, our customers, vendors, deal with. These are some of the financial numbers for a large Australian retailer. Starts with a H. And all this data is public, by the way, so there's no top secret information here. But what you can see is at the top, this is the return on the investment that has been made within the company. So in 2017, if you had invested $1 in Harvey Norman, you would get back 20%. Thank you. You would get back 20%. Is that a good number or a bad number? 20% return on investment. Is that a good number or a bad number? Is it a risky investment? Is it easy to make? Like the CEO from Harvey Norman comes to you tomorrow and says, I would love you to invest $1 in my business. Is that an easy investment decision to make? What was the return on the S&P 500 that year? If you know, that'd be a bit scary, but anybody has any idea? So what that means is you invest $1 in Harvey Norman, you get a 21% return. You invest $1 in the S&P 500, which is one of the less risky investments that you can make outside of some of the treasury bonds that you can get in the US. You would have gotten 21.5% of return. It's not all that's cooked up to be. It's a rather risky investment because it's a tough business. And at the same time, you're not going to get a very big return on the investment and a very big return on the risk. So a lot of businesses are starting to rethink, so what does that mean to be in the retail environment? So something maybe to keep in mind. It's not guaranteed that this return on investment always carries investors to come back. They have better choices. You can invest in the S&P 500 and be done with it, and you'll earn more money, at least that year. This year is not the case, but last year. If you compare this return on business assets across the industry, we've got some usual suspects. So if you look at Ingram, 20% of return on business assets, not very good. Tough business to be in the Ingram business. They've made tough choices as well. As I was saying, they've made a lot of choices around the investment that they are making on the cloud infrastructure, the type of services they sell, the type of services they offer to resellers, but also to customers. CDW, which is a reseller that touches mostly SMBs in the US, has a return on business asset about 40%. So every time you invest $1 in their business, they get $1.40. Harvey Norman, slightly better, 43.7. But if you look a little bit further across the business, Amazon returns 85%. Yeah? So it's clear where you want to put your money now is basically on players that are going to be potentially touching the same part of the distribution business, but are disrupting it, are doing it slightly differently. Yeah. Not going to teach you what it is, a typical channel map. One of the things that we're seeing is a lot of changes in where does the value come from. Yeah. Typically, if you were to talk to a vendor, they would tell you the value comes from us. We're the ones creating the products. Thank you very much. You're just here to fulfill those products. If you were to talk to a wholesaler, they would say, I give capillarity, I give money, credit, I give logistics. So I do all these services. Value comes from me in part. If you talk to channel partners, such as yourself, you touch the customer. That's great. You're the one doing installation. You're the one doing the implementation. That's where value comes from. Fantastic. And then you've got those customers that are basically looking at this whole chain of view and trying to figure out, so where is value coming from? If I listen to Cisco tomorrow, Cisco would tell me value comes from me, right? I understand the technology, and I know how to tailor the technologies in order to fit your needs. If you talk to Westcon Comstore, they will tell you that I am starting to touch my end customer. I do not want to rely upon just resellers. I want to make sure that I understand what the needs of the end customers are, and I want to be able to provide resources that will be able to fulfill those needs. You guys obviously are still delivering part of the value, but the main challenge has really been, how do I deliver that value? And what is the investment that is required in order to make that value happen? So a lot of challenges, and on top of that, obviously, a lot of the vendors are now deciding to go direct. Yeah? So how do you go direct, and what customers are you touching, and how is also a big question. Cisco, I think, is launching a website in Australasia, if I'm not wrong, where they want to touch SMB customers directly. Yeah? So there's a lot of thinking around, how do I change the way I'm touching my customers, and what is the value that I'm delivering in the process when I'm actually looking at the overall ecosystem. And there's been a big change in the role of each and every one of the channel partners. Yeah? It used to be that you wanted to be sitting either on one side, which is the low-value delivery. You collect your 10%. That's usually the way it was looked at for distribution. You were very much close to the product. You were very close to the vendors, usually agents to the vendors, which is normal. If you're a distributor, the only way you make money is collecting rebates from vendors. So if you're not nice to your vendors, you don't collect the rebate, and that means you are not making any money. As you move towards the right-hand side, you're starting to touch customers in a much more meaningful way. You're starting to look at, how do I deliver not only product, but solutions? How complicated are those solutions? What kind of services can I attach on top of those solutions? Do I need to become a service provider? Do I need to change the way I am actually looking at the business that I'm in order to compete differently? There's a lot of talk, talking about Amazon again, there's a lot of talk at the moment about Amazon trying to become what is called an MVNO, which is like it's a mobile virtual network operator. That's what MVNO stands for. And MVNO basically would allow Amazon to become a reseller of telco services. So now imagine Amazon, with all the might that they have selling products, becoming a telco, and basically going straight to your customers and say, why do you want to deal with all these pesky resellers? Why don't you deal directly with me? I do everything for you. I do the connectivity, I do the installation, I've got this network of people that can potentially help me do all this, and you just get one bill at the end of the month. And by the way, if you need toilet paper and detergent for your business, I can also do that. And I deliver it within the next 2 hours. Yeah? That's becoming very sexy. And Amazon is having exactly this kind of conversation with some of your vendors. So we were actually meeting with a couple of executives in one of our customers in Singapore. And they were telling us that Amazon actually approached them from two angles. They wanted to talk about HP supplies. And they wanted to talk, and how do you sell supplies overall? And they wanted to talk about how much toilet paper they were using every day. So think about that conversation, right? You're meeting with senior vice presidents of operations within a particular vendor, and suddenly you're talking about, on the one hand, the business, and how do we actually do better business? What kind of margin am I getting? What kind of intelligence can I give you? And on the other side, I am selling you detergents and toilet paper, literally. And that's becoming very attractive for some of your customers. One-stop shop, I don't need to worry about anything. The only thing that I do is basically collect the money from Amazon, and on the other side, I just pay the check every month without having to worry about multiple distributors and resellers. So a lot of changes are happening there overall. That translates usually into pretty good valuations. The top 5 companies are IT-related companies. Amazon number 2 after Apple. Actually, this has changed, making Bezos the most valuable man on earth, close to 100 billion. Before divorce, after divorce will be a bit less. But that's how the market recognizes how successful they are. Microsoft completely transformed the way they go to market. 5 years ago, Microsoft was selling you licenses or selling licenses through you guys. Yeah? What is the emphasis now in Microsoft? What is the only thing they want to talk about? Azure, subscription, right? Well, we're not talking about Microsoft Office licenses anymore. Forget about all this. Yeah? Download Office for free on your iPad and forget about the rest. Yeah? So Microsoft has been quite well rewarded by the market because of this. They moved up the stack quite nicely. It was a company where 5 years ago you have said, well, what's going to happen with Microsoft? Business going down, etc., and they completely recentered. So the market is rewarding those companies. And in particular, Amazon has been quite richly rewarded in the process. And some of the businesses that we've seen in the past, and I think that data is a little bit older now, but here is a company that used to be about 350,000 people strong, that is now 25,000 people strong, potentially lesser, because they've been forced to basically recenter all their activities around aspects of the business that they felt they could actually deliver value for. We're not talking anymore about delivering very complicated solutions. We're talking about potentially focusing only on services. We need a lot less people to do this. I'm running out of time. A couple of things also that are interesting. Sorry, let me go back a little bit. All right, here we go. Internet players are becoming very interesting. Alibaba, 61% growth. JD.com, 40% growth. Amazon, still a juggernaut, still manages to grow by 40% year on year. It's quite remarkable. And what we see is the business model behind it is also changing. If you look at Alibaba, the Alibaba Cloud is now 10% of the overall revenue of the Alibaba Group. It's still most of the revenue is still coming out of the traditional distribution business, but 10% of their revenue is actually coming out of the cloud. Amazon, it's 13%, but that represents 50% of the company profits. So it's this infrastructure that those players are developing is becoming where they are making the money and where the engine of growth really is. Forrester, a research company, is basically thinking that marketplaces will be about 70% of the overall online spending. Yeah? That's a prediction that they made in 2017, October, and they basically said Alibaba, eBay, Amazon will be about 365 billion. Well, they were slightly off. If you look at how much the other companies that they didn't count into the picture, like Tmall and Taobao, these companies represent a super large chunk of the business. And already they were off in their prediction that would happen over 5 years. The same year, these 5 companies were already 60% of the overall marketplace, or the overall online business, sorry. So a very significant part is done on marketplaces. China is a big driver behind it, but the region here is an incredible driver. We see a lot more innovation coming out of Asian countries than we're seeing across a lot of other continents. Again, China, a big driver, but we see a lot of push in Japan, a lot of push in South Korea. Indonesia, a very prominent market for APAC, which has been delivering quite a substantial growth there. And we see that happening across all the industries. Everybody's getting its fair share of disruption, but IT, computer hardware, has been the first one to be hit. And it continues to be the main driver of online sales right now. And as I was saying, it's mostly driven out of China. The other thing that's happening is a lot of the players are starting to innovate what it means to be distributing. Amazon has this new system that they want to push, which is if they recognize your doorbell, and your doorbell is electronic, they can actually let in the person from Amazon to drop the packages inside your house. Open your fridge and put your eggs in the fridge. How comfortable you are with an Amazon employee to be actually doing this is questionable, at best, but that's where they want to go. They basically want to take that one step further from the value that they're delivering to customers. There's a couple of books, if you want to read them. I'm not going to bore you with them, but B4B is quite interesting. It's all about How do you pay for results, which is a big trend right now that you will see across your customers. And consumption economics talks about consumption economics. That's one thing which is actually quite interesting, which is what we call the blowfish. And it's a concept where the business, as it's changing, is forcing you to make new efforts. And there are two efforts that are required from you. There's one which is recognizing the fact that your revenues are going to drop because you're going to move to a consumption model. So you're going to be deferring revenues from today for the next 3 years. That's problem number one. Problem number two is you're going to have to invest disproportionately in making that business happen. You're not selling gizmos anymore. You're selling gizmos plus services. It's a different sell. It's a different set of skills. It's potentially a different set of staff that you're going to have to hire. Engineers, pre-sales, etc. So you need to invest ahead of the curve, and at the same time, you're deferring your revenue, which means it's painful times ahead. And we see that across all countries, all vendors. Basically, partners need to make tough choices at the moment. So let me go through a couple of solutions. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to go fast. The first thing that we see, and the main challenge, is who owns the customer relationship. Who owns the customer relationship? Is it vendors? Partners? Okay, I'm sure a partner just said that. Who owns the customer relationship? Is it distributors? And there's no good answer to this. But the only good answer is, what role do you play? Right? Where do you see yourself playing? Are you the one advertising for Cisco products? Are you letting Cisco do the advertising? Are you trying to add to the services that Cisco has by creating your own value on top of it? What is it that you're doing? And very often when we have conversations with both vendors and partners around this topic, it gets complicated. And when I heard just now, where is the relationship with the customer? It's at the partner. I think most of the vendors would dispute that. And most of the vendors are actually trying to disrupt your business by inventing new business models. Yeah? Don't sell my switches anymore. Sell my switch, and then we will do a different revenue model for the software. Yeah? And in 2 years, we'll see what happens. So there's a lot of changes that you need to be conscious of. Yeah? And where do you add the value? At which stage? Yeah? Wholesalers are talking very literally now about going down to get very close to the customer, very close. Some of them are developing incredible competencies, and when you ask them why, they say, because I know resellers don't have the money. So I'm making the investment so that I become indispensable, and I just don't collect 3% margin, I collect 15% margin. But now, where does the value from the reseller arrive? Yeah? And it's about getting closer to the customer. But again, it's a challenge because the vendors are also trying to do this. And the problem is, again, you need to invest ahead of the curve. So that's what we see currently happening across your market. The revenue model is changing. The cost structure is changing. The type of products and solutions that you're selling are changing. So what are we doing about it? And it's quite complex, but it means you need to get closer to understanding what your customer is really buying. Customers never buy IT products. Customers buy a job to be done. A server is not them to just have data. They're growing. What is the business issue that they're trying to deal with, and how can you help them with this? This is what we see as being the big opportunity for channel partners at the moment. It used to be keep calm and continue doing whatever you were doing. Don't keep calm. As we were saying, there's a lot of urgency now in the market. The partners are investing a lot. Players that used to be local are becoming regional, global. There's a lot of money flowing, and there's a lot of money to be lost. So don't keep calm, would be my conclusion. So with this, I will thank you for this 20 minutes and hand over to the next speaker.